failure is part of the process. Failure is part of it. So, in every aspect of your life, you might not get there the first time. And sometimes you don't want to get there the first time because you might not appreciate it, right? You might not know exactly what it's going to take to really hold on to that and hold on to the person that you're with, hold on to that dream job, hold on to all the different things that you have in your life. But if you have a failure along the way, it's part of the process of getting to that thing that you've been dreaming of.
You are listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we empower women in medicine through education, community, and actionable strategies for both the practice and the business of medicine.
Medicine is a lifelong career, and continuing education is crucial for professional development. Pinnacle is the first and only multi-specialty organization dedicated to addressing the challenges that all women in healthcare face.
Welcome to Pinnacle, the elite professional community providing education for women in medicine. At Pinnacle, we challenge you to pave your own path by helping you develop the skills needed to not only stay in medicine, but to excel. Welcome to the Pinnacle Prescription Podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Rupa Wong, and I am joined by Dr. Kimberly Hatchett for Leading by Example, where business and medicine intersect. Dr. Hatchett is a board-certified neurologist who still practices clinically and is also interim CMO for her hospital system. Thank you so much, Dr. Hatchett, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I really want to talk about your background that preceded medicine, because yours is a little bit more of an interesting path that many of us had. Can you share a little about that?
Sure. So my pathway to medicine, again, like you said, was not the normal, quote unquote, normal pathway to becoming a physician. I have a business background. My undergraduate degree is in finance and banking. And in high school, I had a fleeting thought of going to medical school because I grew up in Kansas City and there's a 6-year program. And my sister had done like a summer internship or externship type thing. And my parents thought, okay, she did it, so you do it too. So I did the same thing that one summer. But then my sister went to business school and my parents saw that as a way out. So growing up, my parents are, I'm African American, and they both went to college. And most women back then became school teachers in my culture. And so my mom was a school teacher. My dad, of all things, was a federal probation officer. And he was like, don't do this. And my mom was like, don't be a teacher because it's not a lot of money. And they said, but you need to go to business school. That's what you need to do, like your sister did. So I was pushed to go to business school. So I got a business degree, not really thinking much about it. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, I got a divorce. I got married really early and got divorced. And don't say, oh, it's okay. It's fine. Because everything happens for a reason. And that is one of the things that I have truly come to believe. Because had I not gotten divorced, I would not have had the moment of clarity of what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I'm going to have to answer for everything that God has given me. So I've got to do something with it, right? So I had started in pharmaceutical sales, and that was, going okay, but it's kind of a lonely job because you're out there in the field seeing physicians by yourself. You come home to your little office at home because you work from home. And I thought, I can't do this. But I did enjoy learning about the different diseases. And one of the things they make you do is memorize the package insert. But I understood literally, you memorize the package insert when you're selling these drugs. And I remember selling Fosamax. I sold Vioxx of all things. And learning those diseases that were affected by those drugs was so fascinating. And I remember one of the physicians I used to call on was like, you need to go to medical school. And what actually happened was while I was selling one of these medications, it was an osteoporosis drug, I met someone who was a geriatric fellow. And she was African American, young, and she introduced me to another person who was African American, young woman. And she introduced me to another person. And my circle um, started to change. And the people around me were all physicians and all looked like me. And so it was like, okay. And something within me said, you could probably do this. And I was out running with one of my friends. We decided we're going to get fit. We're going to do this. And we're out running in the park. And I said, you know what? I think I want to be a doctor. And I remember she is so hilarious. She said, well, damn it, just do it then. I said, oh, okay. And so then she said, well, let's sit down and figure out what you really need to do. Now, at this point, I have a degree in business. So I don't have chemistry and organic chemistry and all that crap you have to take in order to get into medical school. So I had to go back. And at the time, I started working for General Motors. And I thought, okay, if I could take classes during the day, I was a logistics manager. I could work their second shift at night. So I worked an afternoon, early evening type shift. I got off around 1 o'clock in the morning, would get home, get a little sleep, and then get up and take classes. So I took all of the prerequisites and organic a few times. So I got in.
I know.
So
Don't worry.
yeah, I mean, organic was like, what the hell is this? But you got to take it, right?
That was my least favorite of all the classes.
I was like, this is
I love it. I hated it.
Woo.
I took it freshman year, which was a big mistake, but please carry on.
root memorization. I started to realize, okay, I've got to memorize this crap, methane and butane and all that stuff. So anyway, long story short, I had to go through and get all of those prerequisites done and then apply to medical school. And I applied the first time after I got all the prerequisites and took the MCAT and didn't get in. And I thought, well, crap, okay. But I had seen this vision. Like in my head, I knew that this was going to happen. And I had met one of my best friends who was actually a friend of me in high school, was in medical school at St. Louis University. And like she and I were very competitive in high school. We ran into each other randomly. And then now she's like my best friend. And she was like, okay, just come up to the school and hang out with me. And I remember I went and I walked the halls and I saw so clearly that that was where I was going to be for medical school. And I thought, okay, I'm going to apply again. And I applied again and didn't get in. I was like, well, what the hell? Okay, let me figure this out. And one of the people in that group stopped and said, okay, you've tried twice. Let's do a post-bac program. I was like, what is that? So she sat me down, we applied for it, and I ended up moving to Erie, Pennsylvania out of nowhere. Like, who knows where Erie's at? I didn't. I had to look on the map. Me and my dad are looking, trying to figure out how we're going to get me to Erie, because I got into that post-bac program, and that program got me into medical school. And so once I got in, I was like, I'm in. I did carry around my acceptance letter in my backpack for a little bit, just in case those fools said, you're not supposed to be here. I said, oh, no. I'm supposed to be here. I got my acceptance letter. So I did do that for like the first semester. And once I made it past anatomy, I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm done. I've made it. So yeah, that's my pathway to getting into medical school. And then everything else is kind of
so I want to stop you
after
there
that.
Because that has so many life lessons, of course, right there. First, how did you maintain this vision, this persistence to keep trying? I know a lot of people, they don't get into medical school the first time or maybe even the second time. They just say, that's not meant for me. I'm going to go. That's the universe telling me I need to do something else. How did you maintain your drive to continue?
So
what motivated you in that way?
So I think it's the fact that my dad made me get up early every morning and envision what I wanted to have happen. So he made me do that as a little girl all through like growing up. And once I can envision something, it's hard for me to let it go. So I had envisioned that that's where I was going to be. And so when I say I did that once, I didn't just do that once. I would do that on my way to work every day. I would go by St. Louis University, stop, walk in and walk the halls. And I knew that this is where I was going to be. I envisioned it so much that it was like, this is going to happen. And I remember the guard knew who I was. He didn't know me, but he knew me enough that was like, okay, just go. Because I would come there so much. And I thought, well, why didn't I envision Harvard? Why didn't I envision Yale? What the hell? So I envisioned this Jesuit school in the middle of St. Louis. What is happening? But that was the vision that I had. And so that was the thing that drove me. Like, I feel like if I have been given something in my mind, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. So that's what kept me going.
That's amazing, because I always say I'm going to do that. And we read all these blogs and watch all, listen to these inspirational
Yeah.
videos and watch the memes on Instagram. Look at those. And you actually instituted it, and it was a daily habit from when you were young. This is something I think I need to start doing with my children, because if I can start them on that same path, that's amazing. That resilience is always what you want to have within you and teach your children if you have them. But then the
Right.
second thing that really struck me about your story was cultivating this group of supportive, I think, women
Yes.
who really were like-minded, who were where you wanted to be. So even just a couple steps ahead of you in that way, but they could support you. I mean, how did you find that group? I think a lot of women have difficulty finding a group like that.
I think it's a matter of not being afraid to walk up to a person and say hi, because we're all people, right? I mean, you might see people. I'm thinking, the first time I saw you, I thought, that's Rupa Wong. Damn. She's shorter than I thought she'd be. You know, and I thought
that's what everybody says.
And so I thought, huh. And then I realized she's just a person like I am. And so that's, I think, what makes it easy. I mean, I've dealt with mean people. I worked at General Motors. I worked with all men, and I've dealt with it. So it's like, oh, what can they do but be mean? Okay, well, whatever. If they're mean, that's on you. So I was able to just walk up to people and just say hi. How you doing? That's how I normally just end up meeting people. So I think that one person, meeting her, and she and I went out to lunch. We actually developed a relationship, and then she introduced me to one other person, who introduced me to one other person. And the world is very small. And so the world of African Americans at that level is extremely small. So everyone knows everybody. So once I was in as a drug rep, I knew all these different physicians. And so that's how they all became my friends. And it kind of helped that my friend group from my first marriage kind of went away, and I had to develop a whole new friend group.
Mm-hmm. A blessing in disguise, right?
Exactly. That's why I said, don't say, oh, it's okay.
It's okay. It led you where you needed to be. I'm also interested, you briefly touched on it, but your work at General Motors, working in a predominantly male environment, are there any tips, any things that you learned in that environment, that job, that you now use in your position of leadership as interim CMO, in your practice? So that's a very unusual experience that many of us don't have.
I think what that taught me was not to take. Have you ever heard the term "don't take any wooden nickels off anybody"?
I have never heard of that. And I grew up in North Carolina, so I would have, never heard of it.
So it's something, and maybe it's my dad. My dad was just full of these things. And so that's something that he would tell me every day. Don't take any wooden nickels off anybody, meaning don't take any shit off of anyone. Can we cuss?
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
Let's do it.
So, I love Jesus, but I cuss a bit.
Me too.
So yeah, that's the thing that it taught me, was people would try to get over on me because I was kind of little, short, this woman coming in here. You've never worked the line. What do you know? And I was at a stage in my life that I was slightly bitter because of being divorced. So I didn't really have the patience for foolishness. And if the line stopped, I was like on it. So that mindset of, okay, I'm not taking any foolishness off of you. So when I go into these budget meetings and someone comes to me and says I need to have extra FTE or whatever they are asking me for from a business side standpoint, I'm always able to think business, like, okay, let's focus on the patient and how you're going to impact the patient, but also how are you going to impact our bottom line? And so I think that what I learned from bottom line, looking at the bottom line at General Motors, has really helped me to be successful in this career as an administrator, but also helped me to put things in perspective. because that environment that I was in an assembly line environment, it was like almost like life or death. Like, oh, if the line stopped, it's so many thousands of dollars that we're losing every minute that the line's down. But the reality is, in medicine, like we're really dealing with life or death for real.
Mhm.
And so it's like I really don't think that that environment was really something that should have been so stressful. So I take things with a grain of salt when people are like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to make our numbers." I'm like, "No one's dying. It's okay. We made it through the pandemic, guys. It's going to be all right." So I'm pretty chill because I've been through, the sky is falling, chicken little mentality, and I lived that for so many years. I was there for 4 years. Like, so I started and left knowing that I was going to go to medical school because um I couldn't take so many classes at the same time because I was working full time.
Yeah.
So I was there for a while before that next stage in life happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so that also gave me patience to really see these processes through when we have these slow processes that are happening at the hospital.
Mm.
So that's kind of what I took from that experience.
That's such an interesting perspective. I mean, it gave you perspective, but then you can also take just the culture and decide what was important to you and what you wanted to bring over to your
Hmm.
hospital. What
Hmm.
made you then, so you transitioned, right, from sales, business, the work that you had been doing,
Hmm.
went into medical school. You're a neurologist, which, there's a lot of overlap with neuro and optho. I find neuro extremely
Oh
fascinating. I
yeah,
think it's so amazing. I love localizing the visual field defects. That's a little nerd talk there,
I
but
understand. I understand.
you get what I'm saying. But then what made you interested in resuming a little bit more of the business side?
My first position as a staff neurologist, I remember them looking at our billing and they were saying that we weren't seeing enough patients. And I thought, that's bullcrap. I'm seeing a lot of patients. What are you talking about? And
Mm-hmm.
so it made me look at our billing sheets and I said, you're not capturing my inpatient RVUs. You're not, and I started looking at what RVUs were. And I said, you need to capture our RVUs. And I said, if you're not capturing our RVUs for stroke patients, that's a critical care time. You're probably not capturing it for other people. And so I
Mm.
started looking at other sections RVUs and looking at their billing practices. And I realized, I was like, we're leaving money on the table, guys. Are we billing these third party insurances? Like I've started asking all these questions, and the person that was my manager and then his manager were like, well, can you like spearhead a project? I was like, okay, fine. So I like looked at our thing, and my goal was to get us from this a certain percentage and ranked from the other hospitals that were our size up. And so we went from like the 30th percentile to like the 70th percentile just by changing our billing practices. And but looking at that kind of stuff was just so natural to me that
Mm.
it was like, we have to show our worth. We have to show that we have a right to exist here. And I'm not giving my stuff away for free. So we need to bill correctly. Um, and so that was kind of what started it.
So that also, I'm just so impressed by you, Kim, because no, I really am, because I think a lot of people would have just sat and complained about it. But you took it upon yourself to be curious and investigate what is actually going on with my billing, which, okay, I think some people would have taken that step. But then you looked around for other data, which I don't think a lot of people would have done unasked, and
Hmm.
and turned it into a project and all of the rest, which is really what we need, I think. I mean, I'm not an employed physician anymore. I am not a staff physician, but I think a lot of the issues that many people have in those type of jobs is when they are being accused of not seeing enough patients, right?
Right, right.
And you just grabbed the bull by the horns and decided you weren't going to accept that. That's awesome. That's
So
really amazing. What have you learned in your tenure as interim CMO?
that there's always going to be drama. That's what I've learned. That people are just people, no matter how many letters they have behind their name, people are just going to be people. And there's always going to be some drama. And people do bring their issues from home to work, and you have to deal with that. So that's something that I feel like it's good that I'm a neurologist because we're close to psychiatry and I can listen. That's probably one of my superpowers is that I'm a really good listener. And so I listen to people and I watch their body language and I'm thinking, you just went somewhere while we were talking. Where'd you go?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, oh, I was actually thinking about this, and this. I said, okay, talk about it for about a couple of minutes and then we have to move on because we need to talk about this project that we're, working on right now. So I think that's one of the things that it's being an administrator has taught me. And the guy that was my boss before, who was so at our hospital, it's called the chief of staff, but it's equivalent to a CMO, right? And he was in that position for 8 years. And one of the things that he taught me was that you have to accept who you are. Some people are managers, and it's stop fighting it and just accept it. And so I've come to just accept that that's where I'm at. And he said, and as a physician, you don't want to give up your clinical practice. And he said, and you should never do that. But you have to accept that this is how you're going to help the overall clinical practice of the medical center by doing your job well. So that is another thing that I've had to accept, and it's kind of just come to grips with. That's where I'm at in my life.
Did you have internal resistance to accepting that?
Oh yeah. So when I first started, when I was the chief of the neurology department for about 8 months, and then the guy who was the chief of medicine decided he didn't want to do that anymore. It was too much for him, and so he wanted to mainly do research. And it's like, okay, so now he's a researcher, but they needed a chief of medicine. And then I became the chief of medicine, but I didn't want to give up my clinical practice. So I saw, all these different days of patients. I read EEGs, I did EMGs, I was doing all the things, and I just did not want to give it up. And I finally had to say, I can't do both. I can't be a full-time staff physician and a full-time administrator. I have to will it down. And it took a few years of me really burning the candle at both ends to really understand that I honestly can't do this. No one can do this. So that was the resistance is giving up enough of my clinical time to do the administrative side well. But I think I've gotten to a happy balance. I'm probably am still doing a little too much clinical work, but I've basically told them I'm not giving up any more than I'm giving up right now. I have to see patients and I have to do EMGs. Like I can't not do those procedures. Because I love it. That's something that I actually, honestly, I love being a neurologist. So that's the resistance that I felt.
I mean, you were basically doing two full-time jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, and my RVUs and my productivity showed it. Like my productivity when the second year was like a 215%. And I was like, this is not healthy. I've got to do something different.
I mean, I think many women, they strive for that in this weird way, right? To be the most productive, to say, look how efficient I am. Look at what a great multitasker I am. But then you recognize that that's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable and it's not realistic and it's not real. Like you are not going to be a healthy person doing that. Especially if you're trying to be a wife and a mother, and then you want to come home and cook dinner and then play dollies, which my 7-year-old still wants to play Barbie doll. And me and the Barbie doll are going to the staff meeting. I said, oh, we're going to a staff meeting. And they're like, okay. So they have to go with it. I said, you want to play? We're playing. So
I love it.
So if you want to do all of those things, you have to let go of some stuff. And, in order to do the things that really matter well.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Now, what else do you have in the works? What are the rest of your goals? Where do you want to go from this point?
So it's hard because people are asking me that now. And I have of course, I can envision where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing. Yes. And so I'm excited about where I'm at. I honestly didn't see what I'm doing right now coming. I saw being the chief of medicine coming. I envisioned that. I remember sitting in that office when I was a staff physician and thinking, this will be my office one day. This is where I'm going to end up. But to end up a couple of steps ahead of that, I didn't see that coming. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I kind of just took the leap and took a leap of faith, and I'm doing it right now. But the next phase for me will obviously still include medicine, but I can see myself in a stage. I can see myself motivating crowds. I can see myself. I listened to Mel Robbins talk about what she does and how she does it. And in some way, I could see myself doing that. And so I know that in some weird fashion, that's where my next calling is. Just because I get in front of people, I get nervous. I get what's called the bubble guts before I get in front of a crowd. Everybody was in medical school right before the test. Everybody had to go to the bathroom. I get that before I get in front of but as soon as I get in front of the crowd, it's like everything goes away. And I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know exactly who I'm supposed to be talking to. And I can look at that person, and it's like the spotlight comes down on that person, and I can talk directly to that person. Even I might be in front of thousands of people, but I can see it so clearly. So that's where my next phase is. And I'm trying to figure out how that's going to happen. And I've got to be patient to know that it's going to happen. So when it's going to happen is going to be the case.
I love it. I love it. Okay, let's finish off with a pinnacle pearl. Your one tip, actionable strategy for our listeners.
So I want the people to know that failure is part of the process. Failure is part of it. I talked about getting into medical school and trying and not getting in. I did not get a chance to talk about not passing the boards the first time, right? And that happened. I've remarried and am madly in love with my husband. Oh my God, that man is amazing. That's him right there, up there, holding my two daughters. And I, have failed, but it was part of the process. So in every aspect of your life, you might not get there the first time. And sometimes you don't want to get there the first time because you might not appreciate it, right? You might not know exactly what it's going to take to really hold on to that and hold on to the person that you're with, hold on to that dream job, hold on to all the different things that you have in your life. But if you have a failure along the way, it's part of the process of getting to that thing that you've been dreaming of. So that's what I want to tell people.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's such good advice. Kim, where can people find you?
I'm most active on Instagram at Dr. Kim Neurodoc is my Instagram handle. And then my website is drkimberlyjhatchett.com. So they can find me both those places.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, honestly and transparently. I am inspired by you, and I know that you are going to achieve all the things that you envision. Truly. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me again. And I'm so excited for this new podcast. This is amazing.
I'm excited too.
Thank you for listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we strive to elevate the voices of women in medicine and inspire excellence across the healthcare landscape. Until next time, keep reaching for your pinnacle.